Okay, so here's going to be our quick introduction to the ancient Near East. The first thing that I'd like to say is that we're using the term ancient Near East as a catch-all term for the area in essentially Mesopotamia, so the Tigris and Euphrates River, the Fertile Crescent, etc. So what we don't, or what we'd like to avoid doing is saying that, oh, it's the culture is ancient Near East. Ancient Near East is a region, and there are particular cultures within the ancient Near East. There are, Sumerian, Babylonian, Neo-Assyrian, Neo-Assyrian, et cetera, et cetera. The main idea that I want to mention with respect to that is that there's a lot of turnover in power in this area in the world. It's not nearly as stable politically as what we saw in Egypt. Not to say that Egypt did not experience periods of instability, but overall there was greater stability in ancient Egypt than there was instability, as is evidenced by the very consistent styles in art that we see, and very specifically with reference to the representation of the human figure. So we have there's more emphasis in this particular in the cultures within the ancient Near East on the military power of the ruler. And I'm going to share with you as a reference, I'll give it a link to you on Google Classroom, video that you can watch, one of those the John Green videos. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about the ancient Near Eastern cultures. He goes into greater detail. He speaks faster than I do, I think. And so I would recommend, if you don't have any familiarity with the ancient Near East already, I would recommend that you watch that video, the John Green video, because it gives you a better historical context of it. And the more you understand about the historical context, the better off you are. Of course, I try my best to give you as much historical context as I can, but I am limited because of time, right? Okay. So we want to look at our enduring understandings and essential knowledge pieces for the ancient Near East, right? So similar to the Egyptians, the vast majority of human images that we'll see in the ancient Near Eastern pieces that we look at represent royalty and or divine figures. That's evidenced by this image from the Code Steely of Hammurabi here, who's Hammurabi and is being given the scepter and the ring of rulership by Shamash. We'll talk more about that later. Also represented here by the standard of Ur, we've got our king, and we can tell he's a king because of the hieratic scale. The ancient Near Eastern cultures, while they did have funerary complexes, ritual burials, et cetera, that's not what we focus on with them. Like we focused on with the Egyptians. What we focus on are their palaces. So we have Persepolis here, which we'll look at. That's actually our last piece in the ancient Near East. And we also have two of these Lama Su that guarded the palace of Sargon II. We'll talk about them as well. But again, as we did with the ancient Egyptians, we always want to compare and contrast the artistic styles that we see with these different cultures or among these different cultures. And that will, continue, of course, as we go into Greece and then into Italy with the Etruscans and the Romans. So I mentioned the successive city-states and cultural powers, lots of changeover of powers of the different cultures. I'm going to hide that. The different cultures being the Sumerian, Akkadian, Neo-Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Neo-Babylonian, and Persian. Now, we don't have representative pieces from each one of these, but we mention them here to emphasize the idea that this is not just one single set of power that we're looking at within the ancient Near East. We're looking at a number of different cultures, many of whom kind of take over one another, right? So additionally, we always want to keep our eyes out for artistic innovations. That's going to be a term that I say over and over again this year. How does what the artists or the cultures, how does what they're doing how is that an innovation? How is that a new thing in terms of the production of art or the creation of art or the style of art? And again, comparing and contrasting. Just like in Egypt, religion plays a major part in this, in the cultures of the ancient Near East. The big difference is going to be that these are, I think I'm going to mention this on the next slide, is that the kings of these cultures in the ancient Near East are not divine like they are in Egypt. The pharaoh is divine in Egypt. The kings of the ancient Near Eastern cultures are not divine. They may have communication with gods, but they are not divine. So keep that in mind. Also, we have the idea that cosmology, and that means, of course, where the stars are and the directions and the cardinal directions, right? The cosmology guides representations of deities. And kings. So what we always want to think about is, how something is shaped and where it's placed in relation to the stars above, the North Star, or north, south, east, west, etc. That's going to be an important part of many, as I mentioned earlier today, many of our cultures that we look at. We do see humans interacting with gods, just like we did in Egyptian art, most recently with the Last Judgment of Hunnefer. We also see the same way of representing human figures in terms of, this combination of profile view and straight on view and 3/4 view, et cetera, et cetera. The eye on the side of the head, the shoulders straight on, the legs in profile, the head in profile, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a shared stylistic technique or habit amongst the Egyptians and the ancient Near Eastern cultures. And we also see, as you can see here in the standard or the registers. We also have the registers, and we also have hieratic scale. I mentioned that a little bit earlier with our king right there. The ancient Near Eastern cultures are also known for their ziggurats. Ziggurats, which is basically a huge raised platform with the sides at an angle. This is the one that we're looking at in our study. It's not in great shape. It's been worn away, but we see this. Oh, you kind of blocked it. We see this drawing as soon as that thing goes away. This drawing at the bottom. We can see it's a raised platform. The sides are sloped, and that on top of this platform went temples. And so that's what we'll have in the White Temple and Ziggurat. Also, I emphasize the palaces and how heavily fortified they were, and the whole idea with both the temples that are on top of these really high ziggurats. And you might look at this and think it's not that tall, but at the time it was really, really tall. And you want to think about the relatively flat plains of this area of the world, and then you have this huge towering ziggurat, and what that says about the authority of the ruler who commanded its creation, and the ruler and the high priests, who are the only ones basically allowed in the temple. So this is all about primarily the authority of the rulers, right? So the one thing that's not here that I thought was, I guess it's not in the enduring understandings, is the idea that these are, I think it's in the example about the White Temple, is that these are, again, the kings are not divine, but these are theocracies. They are theocracies, meaning that the king is understood to be the stand-in for the god. Communication is in communication with the god, is the representative of the god. So not divine, but has the god's ears, the closest to the god. So that gives him greater authority. Our ancient Near Eastern pieces are the White Temple and Ziggurat, which you should be doing a Neopod on right now, or already have done. The statues of the votive figures, love these guys. The inlaid shell, the inlaid eyes. So we have these black stones put into the sculpture for the eyes. The standard of Ur, the materials of which are extremely important because they demonstrate trade and communication with other cultures. The code, I call it Code Steely of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi is just the code itself, but the Steely is this kind of up and down vertical shaped piece of stone. So that's in Babylon, but not Babylonian Susian, if that makes sense at all. And then our Lama Su, who are our great guardian figures, they are a lot of fun. We're looking at ones that are from the temple or the citadel of Sargon II. But there are a couple, if you've ever been to the Met in New York, and they're all basically the same. There are that the video, I think, addresses the ones at the Met in New York. It doesn't matter because the information is the same. The only difference is that this is for Sargon II, which we would want to consider as well. And then finally, the audience hall of Darius and Xerxes at Persepolis. So this is Persian Empire. This is going to be really important when we talk about the Greeks as well. The name for an audience hall is an apadana. So you can call it audience hall or you can call it apadana. Doesn't matter. The most important part of this audience hall is going to be this staircase and the bas-relief sculpture on the staircase. I defined bas-relief for you earlier today. And the columns in this hypostyle hall, not so much the columns, well, the columns, yes, but also the bull capitals, which we'll look at, which are gone now, but some remain in some museum somewhere. Persepolis is not in great shape anymore because the Greeks, destroyed it. The Greeks and the Persians were always at each other's throats. Okay, that's all I've got for you guys. Pretty short, pretty to the point, which is nice. I think that's it for today. I hope it goes well with the rest of your study of the ancient Near East. Thanks a bunch.